Welcome to Sexy Mom Abundant Life with best-selling author and coach Kathy Williams, a show to help you tap into the support of the universe and access the abundance that's available in every area of your life. Listen in for conversations and tools to create more ease, joy, and possibility with family, relationships, business, and living. Kathy's joyful perspective will help you tap into your own wisdom and create a life of presence and abundance your way. Listen live on Thursdays at 5 p.m. Eastern, 2 p.m. Pacific, or anytime on iTunes or at IOM-FM.
Welcome to Sexy Mom Abundant Life, everyone. This is Kathy Williams, and today I have a very special guest, one of my favorite authors, and in fact, the author of 3 of Forbes' 23 most life-changing books. So that's a pretty good percentage. Paul Selig is a channel who has channeled 7, now 8 books, even though I think the 8th is not out yet. I will let him talk about the books. And so I'm just so deeply grateful to welcome you to the show, Paul.
Thanks for having me, Kathy. I'm glad to be here.
Oh, thank you. And I know our listeners are so excited because I have a whole list of questions here. And for those people who are listening and who may not know you, I consider you kind of like a reluctant channel in a way. And maybe that's not the case anymore, but it seems like you weren't one of those people who said, now I'm going to, create my life as a channel. So could we kind of have the Cliff Notes version of the journey?
I mean, sure. I was raised sort of an atheist. I'm not somebody who necessarily even believed in channeling. I'd read half a Seth book when I was in grad school and thought it was really interesting, but I didn't finish it. When I was 25, I started to open up spiritually and psychically. I ended up studying a form of energy healing to get a context for what I was beginning to experience, which was unlike anything I thought I would ever experience. I was beginning to, feel energy and see lights around people and things like that. And when I studied healing, I ended up volunteering at a center for people who were living with life-challenging illness. It was the height of the AIDS epidemic in New York City, and I was a young man, and many of my friends were dying. And I found when I had my hands on people's bodies, I started to hear things for them, and that was the beginning of the clairaudience. Or I'd had a couple of experiences with it prior, but it began to sort of work its way into the fabric of how I worked and how I operated. I started a little group that met in my apartment and met for 18 years, where I was beginning to channel and bring through the energy that the guides I work with, come through with and attune people to. But I was a college teacher through all of this. I taught at NYU for 25 years. I was directing a master's program at another college for 18 of those years. So I wasn't looking to be known for this, and I was doing it pretty much under the radar. And then in 2008, the guides started lecturing through me, which was surprising. And in 2009, they announced that they had a book to write. And if I would take 2 weeks, they would deliver it, and they did. And that's now the first of, as you said, 8 books, 3, 6. So, yeah, 8 books. The 8th book will be out in August. The 9th is supposed to come soon. We'll see if that happens. And now it's what I do. I left my academic life about 5 years ago, which was challenging because I quite loved it, and it was secure for me. But the demands of this work just kept increasing. So I'm not somebody that thought it would be nice to be a channel. I don't know why anybody would want to be a channel, to be honest with you. It's really stenography. If it's true channeling, it's not it doesn't, my guides are teachers. I'm the radio that they teach through. And I'm grateful for that role. I understand that. But it's really not about me. And it really hasn't been And I hope it never becomes about that, because then I think I would probably not be very effective. So I do hear about people who say, well, now I'm going to channel and now I'm going to do this, and I'm hearing messages. And, I really did sort of apprentice for about 18 years in this little group, sometimes 3 people, sometimes 10 people. I just showed up for them anyway. And, people would put $10 in a basket, and that was my apprenticeship. And I think, it's what made me serviceable, as a channel, as an instrument, as a conduit for these teachings. I don't always understand them. I'm challenged by them myself. I'm not always the best student, but I do try. And that's the Cliff Notes version. That's what it's been. So it's been a long time that this has been coming, although I've only been visible doing it publicly for about 10 years.
Thank you. Yeah, that was a beautifully put Cliff Notes version. And I love that you say you left a teaching position that was secure, and that was kind of challenging, because I think what the guides are inviting us to is not always secure, and it can be uncomfortable.
Yeah, it's still uncomfortable. I mean, I think we're all in the uncomfortability of it right now, actually. I mean, the guide said in the book that's coming out shortly, which really did, I think, sort of support some of the challenges that we're all going through. It speaks to the times in a really interesting way. But, they said, you get to know, the path is lit as you walk it, not a moment before. And I think we're in this place right now collectively of, being moved into the, as they call it, the eternal now, because that really is all there is without the security of the known. And it's deeply challenging, but potentially, serviceable, I'll use that word, for some real growth and catharsis and change. But yeah, I did. I walked away from what I knew, and who knows how secure the jobs would have been in the long term. I look at when I left and how I left, and I'm grateful that I did when I did. Although I still have dreams that I'm still working at NYU, and somebody says to me, I heard you're now working in a Kinko's someplace. I'm going, or I don't have students from my class. I mean, it's unfinished business. I just didn't go back one year after 25 years. I'd had that job since I was in my mid-20s, and loved it and was very, very good at it, I have to say. I enjoyed the hell out of teaching college. But, now there's something else, and I think we're all here to be surprised. If we could be open to what's next, more than likely it will show up.
Yeah, the path is lit as you walk it. I love that.
Yeah.
And it seems that, in the condition that the world is in right now, a lot of people are finding that what they thought was secure really wasn't as secure as their minds made it out to be. Yeah.
Well, the guides have been talking about this for a while, and I mean, really, probably since the beginning. They said in the very first book, I Am the Word, that humanity was at a time of reckoning, and a reckoning was a facing of the self and all of one's creations. And in the subsequent books, they really have spoken a great deal about the structures that we've inherited and thought to be solid and permanent would really not be. They would be falling, or they would be failing, or they would be changing or transforming. And that, while this would be challenging, finally it was a positive, because, you can only, they've said, you can only fix, the roof so many times. And if the foundation is faulty, something perhaps just needs to be rebuilt. And I think that there's great promise now for us all, actually, if we become willing to what they say, reconceive, know anew, what has been created, and perhaps, see it in a higher way so that it can be rendered in a higher way. I think, we're seeing a lot all of a sudden, none of which we expected to see or necessarily wanted to see, but much of it was always there anyway, in terms of, the lack of equity and how we treat one another, and, who gets valued and who doesn't. All the crap that we've given so much power to over the years is now, I think, being seen in a new light because of the extraordinariness of the times.
I think that for me, that's one of the gifts of your work, of the guides' teachings, is seeing in a higher way. And to be honest, I don't do things sequentially. So I think I started with the Book of Mastery, and then most recently I read I Am the Word, your first work, directly followed by your most recent work, Beyond the Known, Realization. So it's really interesting to kind of see what the guides were talking about, let's say 10 years ago, something like that, to now, and have those back to back, and that it very much is a preparation.
I think it is. The books were written in order or dictated. There's no writing. These books, there was no writing involved, except I wrote a couple of forewords in my own voice. But the teachings, the books are all dictated. They're all spoken, and then transcribed. The last 3 or 4 books were all done in live events, in front of audiences, students. The first few books were done, I was on the phone with somebody on the other end, and I was recording, and she was taking notes, and then I would transcribe. Now I'm happy to send them off to a transcriptionist. But the funny thing about the books is they seem to be quite, I guess, what's the word, reliably consistent. The message I don't think has really changed, but I do think that what they're teaching now, which is really alchemy, is stuff that I could not have really conceived of 10 years ago. I wasn't ready for it. And I think the seeds of all of the books probably are in the very first one, and that they've been unpacking that teaching. And, I think, you can do simple arithmetic or calculus or physics, I suppose, with the same set of numbers, They're still the same numbers. They're how they're rendered and how they're being used. And that's my experience of this stuff. It's still a very personal teaching, but I don't think that these books are necessarily about our personal comfort as much as our ability to realize ourselves and our world and everyone else in a higher way than we have been taught or, able to believe was possible prior. That seems to be their real work. So a lot of people enter in whenever they're called into the series, and they bounce around. And I think it's fine. I think there's help in working through them sequentially. But I don't know. People just go in where they go in, and they find their own way. The guides say they teach in a one-room schoolhouse, and they're meeting everybody, every reader, where the reader arrives at. And I found that to be true.
It feels that way. And, whether reading or listening to an audiobook, or listening to you channel, which is very different from listening to the book simply because of the way you repeat things. There is a tangible energy, a tangible difference while reading, while experiencing your work. Yeah.
Well, that's what people say, the guides said it too. They said it in the first book, and they've said it, I guess, in every book since, that the books are operating on 2 levels. There are the words in the page, which provide a context for the reader intellectually. So you sort of, it's kind of like looking at a map and being able to say, okay, I'm in this town, and the border of this town is over there, and if I keep walking this way, I'll go over there. That's the context. But the real book is the experience. It's the transmission of the energy. The guys say that all of the books are actually, the real book is the energetic transmission that's working directly with the reader. And they said that in the first book, and they said, these are books that are more experienced than read. And I, was curious, and then, the first book came out, and nobody knew who I was, certainly, and there was no publicist. There were, maybe I did 2 interviews or something on radio shows or something. No fanfare at all. But the reviews started coming in on Amazon, and it was really interesting because people were saying, I'm reading this book and my body's vibrating. I'm reading this book and I'm seeing auras, And so there's always been palpable experiential phenomena associated with this. And when I do the workshops, and the guides come through and they teach, it's the same, okay?
And they do attunements. So would you talk a little bit about both maybe attunements, but also in the book when they do the attunements?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, the guides work with language. They say that we're all radios and we're always playing a broadcast. And the broadcast that we're playing is our consciousness, our vibrational field. And what they do with the attunements are tune us to play, they say, the other radio stations that have always been there, that we haven't known that we can access. So they're done through spoken language, through invocation. And the guides say, what is true is always true. And the claims that are being made by way of attunements are always true. So they're always accessible should you speak them and align to them. I think some intention is required beyond just saying the words. But the attunements began, frankly, back in my apartment when I was doing that little group. And I was 33 years old. I'm 58 now. So as I was about 33, they began to bring through the first attunement. And now there's a series of them that really build upon the first, and they're to support the energetic system in aligning and holding a higher level of vibration. And what they say, accord, A-C-C-O-R-D, they say, or A-C-H-O-R-D is on a piano. And they say, the chord that we are playing is our transmission and calls to us everything that we experience, our collective reality. So the attunements are pretty potent. They're in the books. They're probably all up on YouTube at in one lecture or another, because there's a lot of content there now. And when I do my live streams on Wednesday nights, the guides are doing them there as well. But they're things that people can work with, and they're independent from me. You don't need me to do these things. They're present in the work, and they're available. But if you ever took Reiki or something, and your teacher held your hands and attuned you, and you could then run the energy, this is rather similar. It's just a spoken edict, that claims the energy into being.
And we have a listener who wrote in a question about how they're being presented in the book. Oh, so we will ask that question right after the break. Thank you so much, Paul, and thanks for listening, everybody. We'll be back in just a moment.
Feed your soul with waves of consciousness on OMTimes Radio. OMTimes Magazine is one of the leading online content providers of positivity, wellness, and personal empowerment. A philanthropic organization, their net proceeds are funneled to support worldwide charity initiatives via Humanity Healing International. Through their commitment to creating community and providing conscious content, they aspire to uplift humanity on a global scale. OMTimes, co-creating a more conscious lifestyle.
Hello, I'm Sandy Sedgbeer, host of OMTimes Magazine's flagship radio show, What is Going On? My passion is sifting through information, research, and innovations from new thought teachers, speakers, and researchers, pushing back the boundaries of what we know about life, energy, metaphysics, and the universe. I love shifting perceptions about who we are, why we're here, and how quickly impossible becomes normal when we open our minds, expand our awareness, and accept that the only limits that exist are those we place upon ourselves. So if you're the kind of forward-thinking, eager investigator of what lies beyond the current reality that most perceive, why not make a date to come play with me in the field of possibilities at 4 p.m. Pacific Time, 7 p.m. Eastern Time every Thursday, and together we can discover what's really going on.
Hey everyone. Thanks for listening to Sexy Mom Abundant Life.
I'm so grateful you're here. As a listener, you can pop over to meetkathywilliams.com and get 20% off any item in the shop, including videos, energy pulls, even private sessions, by entering the code SMRadio. Also at meetkathywilliams.com, you can download a free Create Your Life exercise and join me for online classes and Hawaii retreats. And if you're stuck, helping you get unstuck is my specialty. I'd love to work with you one-on-one.
A social distancing tip. Putting distance between yourself and others is critical to slowing the spread of coronavirus. So here are ways to stay in contact without the physical contact part. Call, send a text, set up a video conference, post on social media, dedicate a song on the radio. If you have symptoms of fever, dry cough, and shortness of breath, call your healthcare provider before going to their office. For more info, visit coronavirus.gov.
Let's all do our part, because we're all #AloneTogether. Brought to you by the Ad Council.
Welcome back to Sexy Mom Abundant Life, everyone. This is Kathy Williams, and I'm having a conversation with Paul Selig, who's well known for his works such as I Am the Word and the Book of Mastery, the Book of Love, and Creation? A wealth of knowledge, wisdom, and I'm delighted to have Paul here today. We've just been talking about energetic attunements, and I have a question from a listener here that talks about the attunements that are presented in the book. And she says, initially, it said that the guides invited the reader to say the words, right? But as the writings progressed, the phrase changed to, and we will say the words for you. And she kind of got alarmed. Like, no, it's my choice. I value your efforts, but yeah. So she's wondering what to do to not get triggered about we will speak the words for you.
Well, what they're doing is, in essence, praying for you when they do that. I suppose if you don't want them to pray for you, simply say no. It's really that simple. I mean, you see, the guides say what is true is always true. They say you can't make anything holy. It already is. So when the guides say, we will say this for you, and they say, we know who you are in truth, we know what you are in truth, we know how you serve in truth, you are free, you are free, you are free, which is one of the things that they do say for students at times. They're claiming that aspect of you that does know who she is, does know what she is, does know how she serves, and is free, is always free. They're working beyond the personality structure. That's the point of the entire teaching. So, the one thing about these guides, I have to say, is they don't override free will. We have choice, and they honor it fully. But you can claim these attunements for anybody, and you wouldn't be overriding them because you're honoring the inherent divinity by doing this. So if I want to say to somebody, you're a pain in the ass, or you're wrong about this, that, or the other, whatever I want to say, I'm operating at the level of personality. They may be acting like a pain in the ass. They may have opinions I don't agree with, and that's perfectly fine. But to know who somebody is in spite of that, or in the face of that, or beyond that, would be the attunement. I know who you are in truth, which means beyond age, beyond gender, beyond ethnicity, beyond all of the belief systems that we've accrued. You're moving to the eternal true self. And that is the aspect of self that is always true. So to do this for anybody, you can do this for anybody and everybody, and you wouldn't be overriding or bypassing their free will because you're claiming their inherent divinity. Again, you can't make somebody holy, but you can certainly deny it. And that's the challenge that we're mostly investing in, unfortunately, as a collective. The guides I work with say the only real problem humanity faces is the denial of the divine, which they say is in all things. And the moment we put something in darkness, we go right to that level of alignment. Who you put in darkness, what you put in darkness calls you to the darkness. It's really simple stuff. What you damn damns you back. What you bless blesses you in return. So when the guides are invoking for others, it's a blessing. It's the simplest way to put it.
Thank you for clarifying that. And I think that's one of the teachings that struck me the most. What you hold out of the light takes you out of the light as well. Like, what you damns you back. And just even in regard to what's going on right now, I know this is not a coronavirus conversation, but it's sort of like that virus, and even all the fear that's in that virus is also, around that virus is also divine.
Well, I mean, the guy, one of the big questions that I've come up against in this work, and I question the teachings that come through me pretty consistently, but if the guide said, everything is holy, and I said, well, what about fear? Is fear of God? Because we hear, well, there's love or fear. And the guides actually have said, well, actually, fear is of God. It just doesn't know it. It's denying God. The action of fear is to deny the divine. It's really simple. And fear shows up in many different ways, including greed and pride and, the desire for separation or the claim of separation, the belief that one human being could possibly be more worthy than the next, which the guides say is completely ridiculous. So, I'm almost forgetting what the question was. So yes, the fear itself is something that we have to be watchful for, but there's a real difference between being fearful and being prudent. And the guides have been talking about this for a while now, I mean, if there, if I go to the beach and there's a sign that says no swimming sharks, and I want to go into the water, I can get eaten by a shark. That's my choice. If I want to say, well, I'm so holy, the shark will never get me. Sharks like to eat people when they're hungry, or when they're scared. So I think that we have to rely on prudence, which is, a healthy caution, I suspect, but I don't think that that's the same thing as being fearful. I really don't. The guides have said more than anything else they've ever said through me that the action of fear is to claim more fear. And they say, look at every choice you make in fear and see that it got you more of the same. But again, that doesn't mean that it's a great idea to, jump into a bed that's full of tarantulas, probably going to get bitten, use your discernment. It's why that's how I'm operating right now as best I can through these things. I live in New York City, and I happen to be in Costa Rica running a retreat when the city shut down. It was my last event. And I'm assuming that if the news had changed 2 days before it did, we would have canceled that retreat. But it happened with a small group of people. And I ended up here in Maui, because it wasn't wise or prudent to go back home to Manhattan at that time. And I'm very fortunate that I had that opportunity and that choice, that I was able to do this. Many people don't have choice right now. Or at least, we all have choices about what we think and how we respond. But, fortunately, I'm able to work from wherever I am, and at this moment, I'm very grateful to that.
Okay, in relation to that, I would love to ask a question about operating from knowing, but I want to go to a listener's question first, and that she's asking specifically about your adventure from New York to Costa Rica to Hawaii, and just in regard to how those different environments affect you as a channel.
As a channel?
And if they do.
Well,
or as a person as well.
Well, as a person, yeah. I mean, my big lesson right now is I've learned that I don't have to go home again. And I used to do workshops for years, and the guides would say things like, none of you ever need to go home again. And people would gasp. But the guys would say, if you have your passport and a credit card, you really don't have to go home. You don't have to go home anyway. You're choosing to go home. And I've always been so bound. I was, when I taught college, I was a good employee. I didn't call in sick. I did my job. I like structure, and I'm a double Scorpio. I like certainty. I like things to be the way they were. I would eat in the same restaurant for the rest of my life if there was one thing on the menu that I enjoyed. I don't love change. So my experience right now, and, I'm somebody that's often traveling and on the road with my work, but I go home to my dog. I go home to my life. My experience right now is very interesting only in that I'm not feeling attached. I don't have to go home. I expect I will. But I'm learning that I can live with very little. I spent 2 really interesting weeks living in this strange, beautiful little cottage, which was about 200 square feet, cooking on a hot plate. And, trying to get an internet connection to do some work, some reading, so that I could continue to, pay the people that work for me, and you know what? And it was great. It was great. I don't need nearly as much as I thought. I've been living out of a suitcase for a month now. As long as I can do my laundry, I'm fine. So when I was in Costa Rica, it was interesting because I had said to the guides a while back, because I knew something was coming, to New York. And I had said to them a while ago, I just don't want to be here for it this time. I was in New York for 9/11. I was in New York for the AIDS epidemic when people were dying all over the place. And I just said, just let me be someplace pretty, away for once. And I was in Costa Rica. It was gorgeous. And I actually wanted to stay there. And I had planned on staying there. And then I got sort of talked into coming back to the States, and I thought about it. And it was prudent to do that. My insurance is here. I had a good offer of a place to come stay from a beloved friend. I was grateful for that, and I just did it. I have to say, it doesn't really matter where I channel. Sometimes it matters how the room is set up, and how the room is sort of situated, how people are seated. Yeah, I have found that it changes things for me sometimes. But I can channel regardless anyway. My favorite place to channel is the Esalen. You can't be that reliant on external things. I'm highly noise sensitive, highly. I channel now with earplugs in because, if somebody drops a fork while I'm channeling, I'll jump out of my skin. I don't like to be around loud anything. But, I can channel without them. I can do it. I can do it anyway. I believe about channeling is it really is tuning into a radio station and becoming receptive to the broadcast. It has very little to do with what I want, what I would like to hear. If I pose a question, they'll answer it more than likely because I'm required for the transmission. But no, I don't think it really matters. I'm glad I'm in Maui. I was glad I was in Costa Rica, and I hope I'm glad to be home in New York. I moved apartments in New York City during this whole thing. Somebody had to do it for me because I couldn't get back to do it. So I have a new home waiting for me, and my dog is with a sitter, and I'm looking forward to having her in my lap and sitting in a chair and looking at the view out the new window. That sounds lovely and peaceful to me.
Oh, I didn't.
Hello?
Yeah, I cut out or you cut out for a moment. I'm not sure which.
Okay.
Go ahead.
All right. Okay, I'll start that again, unless we have another break coming up. The true self knows, the small self thinks. The guides say if you go to a time in your life when you knew something and just go into your body, remember what it was like to know. I knew I was in love. I knew I got the job. I knew the marriage was ending. I knew the person was sick. Remember what it was like to know, and more than likely you're going to find that there were no questions attached. When you're in your knowing, there is no question. When you're in your thinking, there's always a question. I think I know what I'm having for dinner tomorrow. I think I know how secure my job is. I think I know what my best friend is doing right now. There's all these questions attached, perhaps, maybe. There's nothing wrong with that. But to begin to operate from your knowing is to begin to operate in alignment as the true self, which is the aspect of one who knows. and the guides have said, I am in my knowing, is a claim of truth, because it is the true self that knows. And that's not pretending to know. It's not about that. When you're knowing, there's no need to pretend. It just is, It's kind of, that's the beginning. They've talked about it in a lot of the different books, so there's a lot of teachings on it.
Yeah, I think I am, the word has a lot about I am in my knowing, and it really sort of helped root me into that even more fully. Mm-hmm.
Good.
So the listener was talking about her, she recently met a man who touches her deeply, and she knows she does not like his marijuana use. Yet she feels such a deep connection. And so she was asking, how do I know what is the best thing to do? Let him go and trust if we're meant to be together, we will, or just accept him and grow knowing no one's perfect? How do I know what to do is more of her question.
That falls more into the realm of psychic. I could go into that if you have her name, I can give her a tune in and see what's up. Because I do that work. They call me a medium for the living. The radio that I am.
You're amazing.
I'm playing in the guides. I'm channeling. Well, it's fascinating to me. I don't know how it started, but it's there. The radio station. If that's the other person, I just tune into them, and I can often hear them. So I'll be honest. I've been in recovery for 33 years. I'm not going to date an active alcoholic. It makes no sense for me. I probably would date somebody who had a couple of glasses of wine at dinner. Wouldn't bother me in the least. But, that's who I am. Somebody else might be very different. So I don't think that there's a one-size-fits-all answer to these questions. Now, one of the things the guides say about relationships all the time is, we have to forgive the other person for not being who we want them to be. And if I want somebody to be pot-free and they're not, I got to forgive that. But I still have to make the choice of what is a healthy choice for me. If it's coming out of a place of judgment, which I'm judging somebody for what they're doing, judgment is fear, and then I think that should be looked at. But I know for me, I'd get bored with somebody who was high all the time. I wouldn't enjoy it. I would feel excluded myself, because I'm probably not going to participate because I haven't for so long. That's probably not a good idea for me. So I wouldn't. And then I'm having sort of a different experience with somebody else. I guess I could choose that. In likelihood, I wouldn't. So I can't speak to her. If it's just that you don't like what somebody is doing, well, then you have to make a decision about that. If you're judging what they're doing, you have to make a decision. But if it's really an opportunity to get past your own judgment, then perhaps there is a lesson there. It depends on who you are and what you need to learn.
When I first heard you say what you judge, you fear, it was a real game changer for me.
Yeah,
and I'm really grateful for that. Yeah. Thank you, Paul. Thank you, everybody. We'll be back for Sexy Mom, Abundant Life in just a moment. Thanks for listening. We're on.
The future of Internet radio is here. OMTimes Radio. IOM FM.
Ascending Hearts is no ordinary dating site, but a spiritual dating site with a purpose, to link you with your soulmate. We engineer the serendipity so you can trust that you will attune with someone that has the same matching vibration as you. Ascending Hearts, the conscious dating site for the spiritually aware. Try Ascending Hearts for free. ascendinghearts.com.
Hey everyone. Thanks for listening to Sexy Mom Abundant Life. I'm so grateful you're here. As a listener, you can pop over to meetkathywilliams.com and get 20% off any item in the shop, including videos, energy pulls, even private sessions, by entering the code SMRadio. Also at meetkathywilliams.com, you can download a free Create Your Life exercise and join me for online classes and Hawaii retreats. And if you're stuck Helping you get unstuck is my specialty. I'd love to work with you one-on-one.
More than 24 million Americans have an autoimmune disorder, and that number continues to grow. I'm Sharon Saylor, and I'm one of those 24 million. To put that number in perspective, cancer affects about 9 million and heart disease up to 22 million. That's why I've brought together top experts and those thriving regardless of their diagnosis to bring you the latest, most up-to-date information. Join me, Sharon Saylor, Friday night, 7 p.m. Eastern, for the Autoimmune Hour on Life Interrupted Radio to find out how to live your life uninterrupted.
Hi, we're the Goo Goo Dolls. We're fortunate that our daughters have what they need to grow and learn. But that isn't the case for nearly 13 million kids in the U.S. that struggle with hunger.
Childhood hunger is a heartbreaking reality that Feeding America is working to change. Each year, the Feeding America network of food banks rescues billions of pounds of good food that would have gone to waste and provides it to families and children in need.
You can help kids in need in your community by visiting feedingamerica.org.
Brought to you by Feeding America and the Ad Council.
Welcome back to Sexy Mom Abundant Life, everyone. This is Kathy Williams, and today I'm talking with the channel Paul Selig. We're touching on his most recent work, Beyond the Known Realization. I channeled text, as all his works are, as well as some of the previous works. I mean, they all sort of like interact with each other and build upon the next. So I have a question from a listener, Sarah, and she says, in Beyond the Known, the guides say that the systems we see collapsing can't be remedied because they were initially created by fear and in the need to control others, and that these can't exist in the high octave that's now present, and she says, on this plane. I'd love if you could speak about the high octave and your insight, if you have any, into the new systems and how we can start to implement them.
Well, I don't have any insight into the new systems. I mean, this would be for the guides, and I'm assuming they'll get to that. It may be in the book that's coming out next. I retain about a third of the information from the channelings after they're done. But yeah, that is what they say. I mean, but they don't say that it's all systems. You see, it's basically, they said, the idea of a bank, initially there wasn't anything wrong with the idea of the bank. They said the first bank was somebody asking somebody to hold their stuff while they went off to hunt. It was like that was the bank, and there's nothing wrong with that. It's what the bank has become. There's nothing wrong with religion, but what organized religion has become in some ways, has been, somewhat fraught through politics, corruption, whatever. There's nothing necessarily wrong with the true teachings that are present in all religions. So I think they're looking at structures, and they say, what was created in fear needs to be reknown, remade. Now, in Beyond the Known Realization, they're teaching the upper room, and they're continuing to teach that, and the book that comes after it. And they say we're operating in an octave. An octave is a set of notes. It's tonal. And our reality, the reality that we know, is operating. It's an octave. And what they're doing is they're lifting us to what they call the octave above the one we've known. But from that perspective, we can then lift what we encounter to us. And you're lifting things at the level of essence, not what they've been claimed as, named as, thought of. So the guides have said, for example, you can't lift the evil man to the upper room because you've made him evil. And as long as you're making somebody evil, you're at that level of vibrational accord to them. To lift that man is to reknow him as of source or of God or of the energy that is all things, and release the names that have been accrued by him through his actions or behaviors or how you would judge those things. So when you bring the man to the level of essence, to source, he can then be lifted because you're reknowing him. The claim that the guides are teaching in the books now, it's what they've been teaching in workshops. It's not in the books yet, but they're really beginning to teach, behold, I make all things new, as the claim of the realized self. Because the gods say, the true self or the God self sees the God self in everybody else. You really can't be the light and hold another in darkness. It's the height of hypocrisy. It makes me crazy sometimes when I see people that are claiming themselves to be spiritual sort of denouncing everybody and hating on so many. I don't know that that's how things improve, because then we're solidifying the hatred. We're agreeing to the separation. I do believe, and the guys started talking about this in Book of Truth a few years ago, that everything that's been buried and hidden will be seen, needs to be seen, not to condemn, but to lift. You can't heal what's in darkness. It doesn't work that way. So the opportunity, I suspect, around structures is to let me go to the guys and see if they want to say anything. Didn't think I would do this. We would like to answer this. They're saying we would like to answer this. Everything that has been seen, everything that has been seen or has been known by you or has been known by you, has been known in agreement, has been known in agreement to what it has been, to what it has been. Underline has the historical data you've accrued. The historical data you have accrued collectively mandates what you see, mandates what you see. You will never transform your world. You will never transform your world by continuing to the old, by continuing to agree to the old. When something is lifted to the light, it can be seen as it truly is. It can be seen as it truly is. It can be remade, reshaped. It can be remade, reshaped, reclaimed in an octave above what you have known, above what you have known. That is indeed our teaching. That is indeed our teaching. What it will resemble, and what it will resemble will be the requirement for those who align, for those who align at that level of agreement, which is not in distortion, which is not in distortion, which is not in greed, which is not born in fear, which is not born in fear, or for the very few, the God self. The God self that is within each of you, is one source, articulated in different ways until you learn this. Until you learn this, you will be striving and fearing. You will be striving and fearing and creating idols that you will bow down to, and will again fail you, period. And they're saying period. So that's them.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Beautiful. I had the sense they were going to come in at some point.
Well, they come in when I can't answer something, when it's beyond me. I mean, really, they're the teachers. I've gotten better at interpreting their stuff, but that's really my job. And when I don't get it right, they usually find a way to let me know, so that's just as well. I think that's the way it needs to be still.
Yeah. So, one of the things that really struck me about this newest book was the idea that as you align or come into the upper room, which we've touched on a little bit during this conversation, as you come more into the upper room, then you kind of, it's not the small self trying to get what it thinks it needs.
Yes, exactly.
Could you talk a little bit about that in terms of creating our life?
I'll try. Well, I mean, the guides have put it this way. There's nothing wrong with a house on the hill. Somebody gets to live there. But why do you want it? And people are very busy running around trying to use spirituality or, vibrational accord to get stuff. I want a better looking partner. I want more money. I want this. But nobody's asking why they want these things. And for the most part, we want these things because we've been told to want them or aspire to them. That's why. And they don't necessarily have any basis in who we truly are. My younger brother is a successful man in New York, and he and his wife are living in a cabin in upstate New York right now. And he's writing me and saying, I prefer this. I prefer the simplicity of this. But, he's somebody that was extraordinarily driven professionally. And now at the moment, he's having a very different experience of, walking a couple of miles to the store to get the eggs and the cheese and the milk, and learning what matters, I suspect. So, I think that's a big part of it. Now, the guides say the true self knows. So when you move into alignment to the true self, you're still claiming in vibrational accord. It's still agreement. The guides say we're in agreement to everything we see. It doesn't mean we created it, but it means we're aligned to it individually and collectively. The true self will claim what it requires. When I look at my strange little passage, I'm here in this beautiful place called, Eve's Sacred Garden, here in Maui, and I'm so fortunate to be here right now. It was gifted, I mean, I didn't have to go seeking. I didn't have to go worrying and finding. Things begin to come to you when you move to that level of alignment because your needs are being met. And, it's not magical thinking, and it's not, this is a goodie bag of everything you could ever want, but it does mean, I believe, that the true self knows what we need. And if we align to the true self, our needs can be met. But if we're deciding what we need or what we should have, we're being, we're either going to be operating from scarcity or lack, which is a belief that it's not there, and we can't be receptive to it, or we're going to be deciding what we should have based on a criteria. Now, I happen to believe personally that everybody deserves health care. I have to believe that everybody deserves to have food on their table. I believe that what we've agreed to collectively in terms of these disparities is not in alignment to truth. I just believe that, and it's everything the guides teach is really saying, they say you are your brother's keeper. We really are. Here's an opportunity for us to know that and act on that and take it out of the theoretical and into action. So, but I think, again, the true self knows how we serve and how we can be supportive. So I'm going to be quiet. I'm just going on a little rant. There's no need.
Well, I love that, you articulate more about I know how I serve in your newest book. Because I think there can be a lot of confusion around that one. I've seen someone say, well, I'm a doctor, so,
The guides say how one serves is how one is most fully expressed as the true self. We come from this Western paradigm where everybody thinks it's their career. And it isn't. I tell this story all the time, but my friend Brent, who's 6'2" or something, is a big, strong guy. I tuned into him once and saw him walking down a country road at night, waving at the sky, going, what am I here for? What am I here for? What am I here for? There was a large tree that had fallen across the road before him, and because he's a big guy, he was able to pick up the tree, toss it to the side of the road, and continue, and his arms went right back up in the air, going, what am I here for? What am I here for? What am I here for? He was there to move the tree that fell in his path. It was what was in front of him that needed to be dealt with. And in moving that tree, he also cleared the path for everybody coming behind him. We want it to be sexy. We want it to sound spiritual. We want it to be lucrative. I think, the guides often say to people, what would you do with your days if you could do anything? And if you weren't worried about commerce and the career and the benefits, because more than likely that's your heart trying to move you in a direction. I was doing this work for $20 in a basket years ago, and truthfully, I suspect if nobody were to show up for my events, I would still show up and do this for $20 in a basket. You know what I mean? It's just what I'm here to do right now. And maybe someday it'll be something else, but that's, I think, how to begin to operate.
Well, and what a gift it is that you love to do this and you stuck with it beyond your 18 years of being in your living room. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Thank you so much, Paul, for being here. And can you tell people where to find you?
Yeah, it's my website, paulselig.com, Paulselig. I'm doing a big free event on the 19th. The information's on my website. It's online all over the world. And I teach on Wednesday evenings, most Wednesdays, if people are interested in joining me there.
Wonderful. Those events are fabulous. So thank you so much, Paul.
Thank you.
And thank you so much, everybody, for listening. Have a wonderful week. And you can always find us on